Chinese automakers have experienced rapid growth in the Russian market, sweeping through Russia. According to reports from authoritative Russian media, in January 2022, Chinese cars had a market share of 9% in Russia, which grew to 37% by the end of December. In the first 6 months of 2023, Chinese automotive brands sold 168,000 vehicles in the Russian market, 4 times the sales of the same period last year, further increasing their market share to 46%. Among the top 10 best-selling new cars, Chinese automakers occupied 6 spots. The success of Chinese automakers in the Russian market has increased the recognition of Chinese cars among Russian consumers, who now consider them valuable alternatives in the absence of Western brands. From the perspective of Western carmakers, Chinese brands have taken advantage of the vacant market left by their withdrawal. And for some Russians, Chinese cars, which used to be looked down upon, have become highly desirable options that are out of reach. In August 2023, the top 5 best-selling new cars in Russia were Lada, a Russian brand, with 28,700 units, Chery with 13,400 units, Haval with 10,900 units, Geely with 8,300 units, and Chang'an with 6,800 units. Additionally, data shows that in the past year, 487 new Chinese car dealerships have opened in Russia, meaning that for every 3 car dealerships, 1 sells Chinese cars. A social survey revealed that nearly 2/3 of Russians believe that Chinese cars are valuable alternatives to Western brands after their departure from the Russian market. Among the respondents, 35% believe that Chinese cars have demonstrated convincing performance and reliability under Russian road conditions, gradually changing the perception that Russians need to carry spare parts for their journeys. The surge in Chinese car sales in Russia has been referred to by the West as filling the gap. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine has led to over 10 multinational car manufacturers from Europe, America, Japan, and South Korea announcing their withdrawal from the Russian market starting from last year. Apart from Renault selling its factories for a symbolic price of 1 ruble, Nissan, Mazda, and Ford have also transferred their assets in Russia to their joint venture partners for a nominal price of €1. The reasons behind their willingness to withdraw at bargain prices are shocking, influenced by political factors behind the scenes. In theory, with the withdrawal of strong competitors, there is an opportunity for the Russian automotive industry to become self-reliant and stronger. However, history does not always unfold in such a way. In the first half of 2022, the production of new passenger cars in Russia declined by 61.8%, reaching the lowest level in 31 years, which is equivalent to the levels after the disintegration of the Soviet Union. The underlying reason for this is the weakness of the Russian domestic automotive industry. In the 1980s, the Soviet Union's automobile production was second only to the United States and Japan, and a large number of cars were exported to Eastern Europe and China. They had their moments of glory. However, despite the high production volume, the quality of those cars was severely lacking. The Moscow, Volga, Lada, and Polonez, in Poland, cars exported to China used to run on the roads like tractors, earning them the affectionate nickname of the Big Four of Eastern European rust buckets. The lack of advancement in the automotive industry was mainly due to heavy reliance on imported car components, a lack of research and development technologies and processes, and a lack of clear industrial policy support, which resulted in long-term stagnation in the industry's development. The outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine conflict led to sanctions on most Russian car manufacturers by the United States, severely limiting the import channels for automotive components. At one point, they could only produce cars without ABS and airbags. In order to sustain the entire market, the Russian automotive industry had to rely on external forces. With Western brands taking an opposing stance, Chinese automakers became the only option to rely on. However, several years ago, Chinese automakers were still considered peripheral players in the Russian market, and certainly not in dominant positions. After all, Russia is a global market where fair competition takes place. Zloty Auto, which is not related to ZTE Corporation, was one of the first Chinese domestic brands to enter the Russian market. In 1999, Zloty Auto, a joint venture between Hong Kong-based Huachen Automotive Group and Hebei Tianai Coach Company, Limited, exported 506 pickups to Russia through the distributor Pekinsky Jeep. In 2005, they signed a 5-year agreement to export 75,000 pickups to Russia. At the same time, Great Wall Motors, which specializes in pickups, officially entered the Russian market in 2004. In 2015, they invested $500 million to build a new factory in Tula. After the completion of the factory in 2019, the localization of Great Wall vehicles led to a reduction of 10,000 yuan per vehicle in production cost. The first phase of the factory has a production capacity of 80,000 vehicles per year, sufficient to meet the demands of Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and other countries. Chairman Wei, who has been working hard, also received a deeply meaningful letter in this year. Nicholas, a resident of Novosibirsk, was involved in a severe car accident as a Haval H5 owner, where the vehicle was completely destroyed, but the entire family survived unscathed. After the ordeal, Nicholas wrote a heartfelt letter of gratitude to Wei Jianjun, saying, "It felt like we were under God's protection, and in its embrace, we survived." The next car will definitely be a Haval. It wasn't just Great Wall. Around the year 2005, Chinese domestic brands such as Chery, Geely, FAW, and BYD also flooded the Russian automotive market, thanks to policy incentives from the Russian government. In 2005, Russia issued Regulation No. 166, encouraging foreign companies to establish assembly plants locally. Subsequently, in 2006, Regulation No. 566 was introduced to encourage automotive component suppliers to build factories in Russia. In the early stages of entering the Russian market, Chinese automakers mostly opted for exporting in the form of SKD, semi-knockdown, assembly, commonly known as the screwdriver technique. This involved disassembling the vehicles into parts, exporting them as components, and then assembling them by screwing in a few screws at local assembly plants, which allowed them to circumvent high import duties on complete vehicles. However, after the economic crisis in 2008, Russia's economic situation became less optimistic, and the government began to pressurize foreign automakers. The amended Regulation No. 166 removed the tariff exemption on imported components. This dealt a significant blow to Chinese automakers, leading many of them to temporarily withdraw from the Russian market. It was not until the outbreak of the Russo-Ukrainian conflict that Chinese automakers, who had long focused on the low-cost market, saw a turning point. According to Western perspectives, simply filling the market without strong technological capabilities would eventually be exposed. However, Chinese automakers had indeed accumulated experience and strength over time, and their capabilities were now beyond comparison. Disclosure data as of 2022, Russia had a total of 53.5 million vehicles, ranking fourth in the world, following China, 302 million vehicles, the United States, 283 million vehicles, and Japan, 79.1 million vehicles. Foreign carmakers held a market share of over 60% in Russia, while domestic Russian carmakers accounted for about 30% of the market share.